Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Would you please add Mohammed Alkurd?
Okay, just a second.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. How are you, Muhammad?
I'm good. How are you? Hope you're doing well.
Alhamdulillah. I'm really sorry for this being late because our account was banned and blocked from going live, and that's why we have to do the live from the Palestine. So let's start by Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Abdul Karim from Quds News Network. Quds News Network is an independent youth initiative that is keen on standing out for Palestine in both English and Arabic. And I am pleased to welcome you all in this live. We will be talking to Palestinian activist Mohammed Alkurd. Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm sorry to hear about the censorship, but it's pretty common of Palestinian content creators these days. But it's a pleasure to be on with you, and I'm happy to speak to you.
Thank you. And we also have Shireen Sabbah. She is a Palestinian activist from Gaza, and she is representing the Palestine team. Assalamu alaikum, Shireen.
Alaikum salam.
Ahlan, Shireen.
So, Mohammed Alkurd is an outspoken Palestinian activist based in Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in the occupied East Jerusalem. He, along with almost 500 others, are facing forced displacement by Israeli occupation authorities for the benefit of Israeli Jewish settlers. And his home is now, half of his home is occupied by an Israeli American Jewish settler. His name is Yaqub, and we've recently known that his real name is not Yaqub. His real name was Justin Fushi, and he is a convicted fraudster who escaped justice from the US. So Shireen, would you like to tell us more about yourself and the team that you are representing?
Yes, sure. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, Ahmad. My name is Shireen Sabbah. I'm from Gaza, Palestine. I'm presenting the Palestine team. So I'll just give you a little brief about our team before we start. So basically, the Palestine team brings together a group of young Palestinian university students with the aim of increasing the world's awareness of the reality of Palestine under the Israeli apartheid and settler colonial regime. So basically, we share breaking news, live updates, and stories from the ground or on our social media accounts like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, and WhatsApp. And we always get banned, or our accounts are always deleted because we are basically trying to expose what the Israeli occupation is trying to do in Palestine. Yes, that's a little brief.
Thank you. So how would you like, Mohammed, tell us about yourself for the viewers that are seeing us now?
Absolutely. First of all, nice to meet both of you. I think I'm not much different from all Palestinians living under Israeli colonization and military rule. I'm a writer, and I speak, I have the privilege of speaking English, so I use the English to spread awareness about what's happening and call out the Western double standards and all of the Western imperialism that is participating in our oppression in Palestine, particularly when it comes to ethnic cleansing and dispossession, like what's happening in Sabih Mountain, Silwan, El Aisawiyya, Lifta, the South Hebron Hills, and of course Sheikh Jarrah.
So yes, we see that Israel is almost keen on taking every inch of Palestine, as you said, that Batn al-Hawa and Silwan and Jabal Asbih in Nablus, all of these places are now under the threat of being of having their families forced out of their homes and being replaced by Israeli settlers. So, Muhammad, what makes you go ahead in your struggle against Israeli settler colonialism?
There's not really another option, I think. Yani it's what you have to do. It's kind of an obligation to speak against this, because the only other option is that you surrender, and so your house is going to be taken. We know Palestinians all across colonized Palestine, from be it in occupied Haifa or in the Gaza Strip or in Jerusalem or in Ramallah, all of us know how imminent the risk of ethnic cleansing, the risk of dispossession, be it by taking our homes, be it by demolishing our homes, or stealing our lands, or building national parks on top of our lands, or building settlements on top of our lands. Ethnic cleansing is constant, and I think our only option is to speak out against it. I think it's also really important to know that just because nobody, you know, when your house is taken, it's not the same as somebody getting bombed, but it's just as important to speak about it. And you know, the Israeli regime has kind of deluded us with the idea that what they do to us is legal. So it's our duty to expose that none of this is legal, and no legal framing or no Israeli language can make it legal or okay. So that's what makes us go, I think.
Well, you're doing a great effort. Thank you, Muhammad.
Thank you.
So many people ask, why wouldn't you just let it happen? Just go outside, travel, and lead a peaceful life.
Well, there's two ways to answer this, right? The first answer is kind of a pragmatic answer. Most Palestinian people are working class people, and these homes are our only homes. We do not have the means, the resources to live in other homes. We don't have the access to just leave the country. We live, a lot of us, with extreme severities, but we live in open air prisons, be it in the besieged Gaza Strip or be it behind the Israeli apartheid segregation and annexation wall. We all live in an open air prison to a certain degree, and not all of us can just leave the country. That's the first. But the second answer is, you know, the more, you know, sentimentally don't stop, because it's our homes, right? If I were to come over tell you it's mine, you wouldn't just surrender to that. You would want to get back your phone. So yeah, just the knowledge that this is our home, this is our property, this is our land, and this is something that's happened to our grandfathers, to our fathers, and continues to happen even before 1948.
So I can really feel what you are going through, and as you said, that a house being bombed is not like a house being evacuated, but you know that Palestinians feel that sense of having their homes taken out is not as easy, and it's like actually as if it's being bombed. And I know it's hard to imagine that an Israeli settler is sharing your half home. So tell us more about yourself. What do you do every day? Let's say a day in Muhammad's life.
I work and I teach English to first-year college students in the United States, and I go to school for literature. But like you said, it's I know people tend to think that it's hard to imagine living with an Israeli settler, but when you zoom out of this situation, when you zoom out of Sheikh Jarrah, you recognize that as Palestinian, all of us are sharing our homeland with Israeli settlers, and we are being forced to share our homelands with Israeli settlers who assault us, abuse us, continue to kill our children, kill our families, kill our men, who continue to throw us in prison and incarcerate us, who continue to terrorize us, carpet bomb us. So I know Sheikh Jarrah has come at the forefront of the world in the past few months because of how intense it is to see the settler inside my house, but it's certainly not the first house where people share their homes, quote unquote, share their homes with settlers. And it's not the only house where people are have had their homes stolen. Again, why Sheikh Jarrah is so important is because it's not just about Sheikh Jarrah, and it's not just about my house. I care about my house. I care about remaining in my house, but it's not about the physical property that is my house. It's about the fact that Sheikh Jarrah was once Jaffa, was once Akka, was once Haifa. Sheikh Jarrah is now Silwan, it's Beta, it's all of these places. It's about highlighting the systemic and legalized efforts of ethnic cleansing that the Israeli occupation government has continued to implement and advance since its establishment in 1948. It's genocidal establishment, I might add.
Yeah. So basically, there's like this question that has always been repeating. Have you tried to talk to that Jewish settler who is occupying your home right now? Let me say Yaqub, as we know him. Have you ever tried talking to him? I don't know, telling him what is going on, or trying to make him see the facts that this is not his house or anything? Did he respond?
No, I don't believe in talking with settlers. I don't believe there can be dialogue between the colonizer and the colonized. And, without talking to him, he clearly knows. He's an employee of a settler organization that is funded by the billions, by billionaires who are living in the United States, by Zionists who are living in the UK, by Zionists who are living in tax deductible, like in areas where you don't have to pay taxes. He knows what he's doing. He's an employee of a much larger machine. I know he looks like an idiot. In the videos, he looks like a stupid man in the videos. He looks terrible, but he also knows what he's doing. And I don't believe in talking to him. I don't believe in humanizing these settlers because they're criminals at the end of the day. They're all colonizers, and some of them might look stupid, some of them might look unintelligent, some of them might look even amusing to look at and interact with. But at the end of the day, these are the people who are killing us and terrorizing us and bombing our people. So I think it's very important to draw a hard line at talking to settlers.
Yes,
That
when
is
we
just
talk
my
about
personal view, though.
yes, when we talk about Sheikh Jarrah, the first thing that comes to my mind is the Nakba. We did not witness the Nakba, and we didn't see the Nakba happen, but we see that what happens in Sheikh Jarrah is the second, the third, the fourth Nakba that is happening. And what we see in Jabal Isbih now in Nablus, 4 Palestinians were killed over the past month. So why is Sheikh Jarrah is important to Israeli occupation?
Well, to add to what you said, you said it's the 5th and 6th. I think it's the 1000 Nakba, and I think, the Nakba has never stopped, right? It didn't begin or end in 1948. It continued, right, with every person exiled, with every person whose residency got revoked, with every person who was massacred, bombed, with every neighborhood. Just in Gaza, in the past, I believe 2 months, please forgive me if I'm wrong, but in the past 2 months, I believe over 30,000 people were displaced from their homes. That is a Nakba as well, right? We have this continuous policy every single time a grazing land for somebody in Hebron is declared a military zone. That is a Nakba. Every single time a community is prevented from its natural growth because the Israeli occupation municipality decides to implement, a national park. That is another Nakba. I think this is really important context to speak about when we talk about the Nakba. It's our genocide as a people is ongoing and it's incremental. It's happening in small doses and across the stretch of now, nearing 8 decades. Why is Sheikh Jarrah important for the Israeli government? I think that's also an excellent question. We are the last remaining Palestinian neighborhood in the northern part of occupied Jerusalem. In my view, the entirety of Jerusalem is occupied, right? So we're not just in the east of Jerusalem. We are what kind of connects the east and the west. And we are surrounded by what's called, border police, the Israeli military, other occupation police, offices. We're surrounded by many settlements, by many Jewish Orthodox schools all over our neighborhood. And one by one, our families are getting thrown out of the home and we're being ethnically cleansed. It's important because, once Sheikh Jarrah is ethnically cleansed of Palestinians, first of all, there would be no more remaining Palestinian front to protect the old city from the north, but also it'll connect Mount Scopus, the Hebrew University, and all of these, colonized areas of occupied Jerusalem to other settlements in nearing neighborhoods. And it will continue, first of all, isolating, dividing up Palestinian populations, making any kind of economic, cultural, or even socio-political growth absolutely impossible, let alone demographic growth. But it'll also strengthen the ties between these settlements, and it will strengthen the Israeli presence in Jerusalem. People often talk about a two-state solution, which is not something I believe in whatsoever, but Sheikh Jarrah is a great example at looking at how a two-state solution is an absolute joke. It's a fictional story, because we are surrounded by settlements in what is so-called East Jerusalem, where Israelis are mandated under international law not to have jurisdiction over us, not to take our lands, and yet they are doing this, right? But again, the entirety of Jerusalem is colonized. The entirety of Jerusalem is occupied.
Exactly. Well, I recently, like maybe 2 hours ago, I saw a news saying that there will be a court in August this month regarding Sheikh Jarrah. Is it true, or?
There's a court case for the 2nd of August. Yes.
Okay.
So why do Israelis keep postponing it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So why do Israelis keep postponing the court hearing?
Well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. The very fact that there's been international mobilization around this issue is unprecedented. This is not something we've seen before. And the kind of diplomatic and political pressure, although I think it's not enough, it's not adequate whatsoever, but it's also unprecedented. And I think they're trying to ethnically cleanse us in the darkness, and they're trying to do it while nobody's watching. But I think the people who are watching us today, watching this live, and people in general are not going to get bored and are not going to get tired, because they're with us for the long ride.
Exactly. So we all have memories regarding what Israeli occupation have been doing to us since forever, I think, because since I was born, I've been facing the Israeli occupation in wars and all that in Gaza. But what about your memories of your childhood that involved the Israeli occupation? Some memories that that are still in your mind that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think my childhood did not differ much from any Palestinian who grew up in Jerusalem or in colonized Palestine at large under Israeli military occupation. I think, there's a sense of there's the true fact that we are being constantly surveilled by the Israeli Zionist regime at all times. And there is a heightened violence that we see all the time, police brutality all the time. In let's say, if my case were to be unique, I think what made it unique is the fact that my entire childhood revolved around Israeli occupation courts, going to the courts. The Sheikh Jarrah case is one that's been going on since 1972. And since I was born, my sense of time has been formed and shaped around going and coming back to the Israeli court, worrying if my house was going to be taken or not, having half of my house taken one time in 2009. All of these different things, the courts have shaped my idea around the occupation. And it's really important, since we're on the topic, it's very important to note to people that the Israeli courts are inherently colonial, right? The judges that are prosecuting you, that are taking you, that are asking you the questions, that are supposedly helping you, are all settlers. All of them are settlers. If we're gonna use international law as as a reference, two of the Supreme Court justices, the so-called Supreme Court, two of them live in internationally recognized settlements. So if you don't want to take my word that they're all settlers, you can at least believe international law. But again, I think they're all settlers. That's one thing. So it's really important for people to remember constantly that the law here means nothing. It's all political. These are laws that were built by and for Israeli settlers to help Israeli settlers, to uphold Israeli settler supremacy. These are laws that legalize the ethnic cleansing of our people, the dispossession of our people. So I think, again, this is really important context.
So, when we try to defend ourselves and resist against Israeli settler colonialism and occupation, we are called terrorists and we are not allowed even to resist. And when somebody wants to speak up for Palestine, they are called anti-Semites. So how would you react to the smear campaign being launched now by the Israelis against you?
Okay, well, there's two ways to answer this, right? Like, I'll answer the facts first. The fact is, people who are under occupation, who are under colonialism, have a right to defend themselves, to resist, to protect, in whatever capacity, in whatever way they choose. It's an absolute right. It is insane to suggest otherwise. Any American, any Israeli who would be faced with our circumstances would absolutely resist, right? But that's not why these questions are brought up, in my opinion. I don't think people, like when I'm asked on TV what I think about resistance, or when I'm asked on a webinar what I think about resistance, I don't think people are interested in hearing my position on resistance. I'm 100% for resistance, but I think it's a red herring. It's a distraction, Yani. Whenever we're asked about resistance or anti-Semitism or this or that or blah, 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 all of these things, they're all hypothetical, or at least most of the time hypothetical. They ignore the very fact that there are bulldozers crushing our homes. There are warplanes flying over our neighborhoods, bombing us. There are people who are spewing, all kinds of anti-Palestinian racism, Islamophobic racism, all kinds of things that are actually material and systemic and can influence and do influence our lives, that kill us every day. So I think whenever we're confronted with these smearing campaigns, the Israeli propaganda tactic, the Zionist propaganda tactic, is to put us on the defense, right? To put us in a position of defense, right? They charge me with terrorism. I am now accused of something that I have to defend myself against. I think we can be with all of these things, with resistance and all of these things, without falling into the trap of like defending ourselves and saying, we're this and we're that. I think it's more important to focus on the larger issue, that there's a Zionist colonialism in our country that is absolutely brutalizing and dehumanizing and does everything it can to destroy our lives, every aspect of our lives. That is the real terrorism. That is the aggression in this equation. So I think, we have, as Palestinian people, and this is just my opinion, right? I could be wrong, but I think we as Palestinian people need to be smart about how we answer these questions without ever condemning resistance, without ever, throwing resistance under the bus or claiming that resistance doesn't represent us. Resistance represents any free person, any person who's subjugated and would like to be free. Resistance represents them. That is not the case here. The case is that we're often getting thrown with red herrings, with disruptions, put on the defense to distract from the fact that these people who are asking us about anti-Semitism, who are asking us about violence, are some of the most violent, hateful people on earth.
Yes, exactly. So you have been hosted by several mainstream media outlets. How could you describe their reportings? Are they biased against Palestine? Are they adopting the Israeli narratives and neglecting the Palestinian ones?
I think they're absolutely biased. It's not a question. I think they're absolutely biased. Historically, absolutely super biased, racist, not even biased. Like I would say racist against Palestinians. And I personally think that the enemy of the Palestinian people, alongside the Israeli occupation, is mainstream media. They're super racist and super biased, and I don't think they're going to change their language anytime soon. They don't just neglect the Palestinian narrative, they work against it. They work against it, right? I have experiences with mainstream TV channels where I sent, for example, I'll give you a specific example. I sent a TV channel a video clip of a Palestinian minor getting arrested. And I said that his age was 16 while he was getting arrested. When I got on the TV, the reporter said that this adult was arrested, even though I told her, and she can clearly see in the video, it's a child getting arrested, right? So this is like sinister, I think, in my opinion. This is people who are working against us, and they're trying everything they can to put us in tough positions, ask us really hard questions to incriminate us, right? But I think you can be smart about going on these, channels. For example, if you're going on a TV channel, I would suggest, advise you all to go live, to refuse to be pre-recorded. So you could say whatever you want without getting edited. And if you're on a TV channel and somebody says something that is misleading or racist or problematic or interfering with the truth, take a minute to correct it. I think that's really important because these channels are bad. They're not great for us. But the fact that your voice could reach living rooms where it didn't reach before is good. And if you're smart about it, you can make some kind of small influence.
So, Muhammad, what needs to be done? How people can help the people of Sheikh Jarrah? How can we support Sheikh Jarrah? How people outside Palestine can support Sheikh Jarrah?
I think there's many fronts to be fought on, right? The first thing is, what people call the raising awareness issue. Making sure you are constantly talking about Palestine, but not only that, but reflecting the language that Palestinians use. Because often we as oppressed people reflect the truth of the matter, right? So let's not continue to say Israeli Defense Forces, let's say Israeli occupation forces, because that's what they are. They are literally occupying our lands, and thus they are occupation forces. Those things, right, reflecting that language and continuing to talk about Palestine at all times. The other thing is a little bit more tangible. Protesting, boycotting all Israeli products, all of them, irregardless of where they come from, boycotting Israeli products, pushing for sanctions. And the last thing I would say, this doesn't have to do with Palestine. If there is oppression in your country, if your government is fascist, if your government is carrying out a genocide against another people, you must fight it. You must fight it simply because it's an injustice, but also by default, if you're fighting against fascism in your country, it will undermine fascism that is killing me and suffocating me, right? Because Israel, or the Israeli occupation, Israel, does not behave by itself. It's not independent. It has people. For example, if you're in the United States, your tax money is giving $3.8 billion a year to the Israeli occupation to kill us and demolish our homes. This is a front you can work on, but also you should work on it because your government, the American government, is a terrible government. It does terrible things to terrible people all around the world. It's an imperialist government. It's all of these things that you should fight against regardless of where it stands on Palestine, right? This is where I come from.
Thank you, Muhammad, for your time. We were really pleased to have you with us in this live.
Of course.
So you said we need to be smart. We need to be smart responding to any questions that comes up when we are asked from people outside in the world. For example, when someone asks you, why won't you accept the two-state solution? Don't you just want peace? I actually face that question a lot, but I pose, how can I answer this question in a smart way that cannot, like, I don't know, take my right from me as a Palestinian, as a person living in Gaza and Palestine, who has the right to live in an independent state without the occupation inside it. Yes. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's an excellent question. Let me try to answer it, right? I think I think that question is a distraction. I think the entirety of the Israeli propaganda machine is distractions upon distractions. What you could say to the person is that let's play along with the person, right? Let's assume that you want peace or you don't want peace. The fact on the ground is there's an entity, there's a state with nuclear power, that is a military superpower, that has insane amounts of money and resources, that is occupying your land. You as a Palestinian, regardless of your opinion, have no decision, no say in whether or not you want peace, whatever that peace means, right? It's again a distraction. It's trying to get you to forget the facts on the ground, that there's literally material violence, systemic violence being carried out against the Palestinians. If the Israelis wanted peace, then they wouldn't be doing the things they are doing. It's not about us accepting crumbs. Like, you don't get to, like, I don't bake a cake and then you take 99% of the cake and then you give me crumbs and then I don't want the crumbs and you're like, oh, you don't want the cake. That's not what happened. So it's really important to just say no, right? You don't need to, in these questions, right? You don't need to answer the question itself. You can just point out how hypocritical it is, how imbalanced it is. You don't need these people. When people ask you about two states, when people ask you about peace, when people ask you about coexistence, they are not interested in your answers. They don't care about what you have to say. It's just to distract you from the facts on the ground.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem. We all have.
And please, would you say hi to Mona and thank her also for her activism?
Thank you. I will. And, you know, thank you so much. I appreciate all the work that you do at Quds Network, and I'm very glad to know Be Palestine. I'll be looking forward to all of your work. I really, really appreciate your time, and I appreciate this conversation. Thank you for having me, and let's repeat it anytime. Thank you. I hope you have a great night.
Thank you so much.
شكرا لكم يعطيكم العافية.
All your effort. Thank you so much.
شكرا يعطيكم العافية. Thank you so much.